Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Northeast Clean Freight Corridors Workgroup Kickoff Meeting. My name is Alicia Gildy, and I'm the Northeast Regional Director for CalSTART, Clean Transportation Organization, and I'm also the Chair of the Strategic Planning Committee of the Northeast Diesel Collaborative. I am joined with the Strategic Planning Committee to kick off our very first meeting, and we're very excited to have all of you join us today. We believe we've started something really special, and we're excited to get your engagement and participation. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. I just want to make sure that if you haven't already done so, make sure that you've entered in your audio pin. This will allow for you to participate during the discussion period of our call today, and we definitely want to hear from you. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and enter in your audio pin. You should be able to see that. If you look to the right side of the control bar, you'll see audio, and it'll tell you exactly what your audio pin is. Make sure that you have that entered in. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. So first I would like to talk to you about who is the Northeast Diesel Collaborative and what is the purpose of the Northeast Clean Freight Corridors Workgroup. Why do we need your leadership and support? And what are our goals and objectives? And how are we going to move them forward? So about the Northeast Diesel Collaborative, it started back in 2005 and was started by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency along with the Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management. And they formed this collaborative to help reduce diesel emissions and improve air quality by working with all modes of transportation, bringing in partners of government, industry, community groups, environmental groups. And really with the Northeast Diesel Collaborative, that group comprises of the New England states, New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Our mission through the Northeast Diesel Collaborative is to raise awareness, prioritize activities, seek funding, and find ways to create and drive action in the Northeast. So in October of this last year, we had every 2 years we have a partners meeting, and this was a very successful, engaging, results-driven meeting where we talked about the big barriers, challenges that we're facing in the Northeast as it relates to transportation and air quality, and focused on what are the solutions, how do we need to move forward as a collaborative, as a region, to promote sustainable transportation. And one of the topics that came out, or I would say probably the most important topic that came out of this partners meeting and what has brought us all here together today, is the focus and the opportunity to promote clean transportation through clean freight corridors. So what is our challenge? I include this slide just to kind of show you that, look, we're a very busy region. We're a growing region, and we need to be able to respond and prepare and adapt as it relates to clean transportation, technologies that are going to move us forward. So what is the state of our corridors? So we're closely connected states with urban communities. We have old infrastructure, and we're vulnerable to climate change. We have an inefficient movement of freight and people. And like I said, we have a growing population, and we're not quite yet prepared to respond to our growth in population. We have increased traffic and freight congestion. We have poor air quality, and some of our states are non-attainment status for critical air quality pollutants. And we have people living near freight corridors. So what are some of the barriers that are preventing us from being successful and moving clean freight corridors forward? Well, we have poor coordination among states. We have a low cost of diesel fuel. We have this chicken and egg paradox where we don't know where to go first. Do we put in an alternative fuel infrastructure station, and the fleet then will have their fleet ready to access and utilize those stations? Or what do we do? We have limited funding, and there's a lack of education and awareness on clean transportation solutions and available resources. So what is our opportunity? And I include this slide here because I wanted to share with you a really good start of something pretty special and why we're creating this work group in the first place. At our partners meeting in October, we had a special session focused on clean, we called it our Clean Corridor Congress. It was an extremely engaging opportunity where, in fact, we were a little worried at first that we might not get as much participation, and I even asked folks to speak up and to share their perspectives on why it's important that we promote clean corridors. And what was so great is that we took time to really understand from different perspectives, from freight, from the port side, from rail, from truck, from off-road construction, cargo handling, marine terminal operations, logistics, supply chain management folks, really to understand from these different perspectives what are the barriers and what are the opportunities and how do we move forward. Just real quickly, if folks can put their phone on. I kindly ask our panelists just to keep your phone on mute before you present. Thanks so much. So our Clean Corridor Congress really started something special. It was an opportunity for us to hear from different perspectives on, what are our challenges, what's stopping us from being able to better coordinate and plan for infrastructure, how do we grow a market for advanced vehicle technologies, how do we promote efficiency, and where are there opportunities? So now, why create the Clean Freight Corridors Work Group? Why focus on this right now? Why is this important? So what we learned from the partners meeting, and since we've had that partners meeting, we continue to engage with various stakeholders. And we've learned that NEDC stakeholders see clean freight corridors as a win-win solution for all. And we believe we've created a mechanism for coordination and partnership on this issue. Not only that, but the U.S. Secretary of Transportation has issued an opportunity to designate clean corridors under the FAST Act. EPA and DOT, coming this fall, we're going to have a workshop specifically focused on clean freight corridors. This slide, I wanted to show you that, look, we're already making some good progress. This is not to say that there's not a number of really important emission reduction and efficiency projects underway. There are a number of them that are really paving the way, making progress, and are instances where we need to build upon success and we need to leverage lessons learned from our stakeholders. Here's a slide that shows existing infrastructure that we have for truck stop electrification, propane, natural gas, and then public stations for electric vehicles. So we want to be able to look at various alternative fuel technology solutions, whether it's biodiesel, whether it's natural gas, whether it's electric, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's looking at hybrid solutions, whether it's looking at truck stop electrification and idle reduction solutions. We want to build upon the successful technologies that are already in the marketplace and also keep our head of the technologies that are coming around the corner and how we can leverage that by working together and planning our freight infrastructure to accommodate these technologies. So now I'm going to hand it over to Abby Swain, and Abby's going to talk to us a little bit about the work group and what we plan to do with this work group. Abby, over to you.
Thanks, Alicia. This is a really exciting call. I'm really gratified to see 50 folks on the call, which is not just the usual suspects, but it's our constituents out there in the real world. So thanks for coming together today. It's a little hard to convey all that's led up to this moment, but I think we got a really strong signal from our partners and stakeholders meeting last fall that we really need to take the next step on this. And we've got a good core collaboration going, and we really want to bring you into it. So what we're trying to do is go across boundaries and go across sectors to pull together and figure out what our corridors need to be for clean fuel or alternate fuel and shore power infrastructure, and how to pay for it, and how to make it real, how to make sure people use it. Next slide. So you are the sort of core group that is representing our constituents out there in the world. We really did a lot of beating the bushes before this call to try to bring you to this call, and we targeted you on purpose because you're people in the sectors and the geographic divisions and the layers of government that you represent. So we're trying to bring folks from all these entities that you see on the slide together to work together, and it is a fairly huge undertaking, but we figure someone's got to try it. And the Northeast Diesel Collaborative has some experience in this realm. We've been going for umpteen years, I'd like to say 10 to 15, I didn't check just now. But we're used to bringing disparate stakeholders together from across various parts of government and industry and environmental groups, etc. We've been operating ports work groups, ports and construction work groups for years now, and we've had a number of multi-stakeholder events. So I figure, you know, we're as good an entity as any to try to propel this forward, and we don't feel like we have ownership of this. We're, you know, quite willing to cede that territory to anybody who feels like they can do it better, but in the meantime, we're just going to give it a go. Next slide. So you can kind of read along, but what I wanted to add to these two slides coming up is that we can't just build clean freight infrastructure, the fueling stations, the layover stations equipped with shore power, etc., and assume folks will come and use it. We've seen that fall through in the past. We've spent a lot of money. A lot of people have experimented in large and small ways, and I really think we can do better if we all collaborate and plan together. We also can't shirk our responsibility for trying to guide public infrastructure investments with a little bit of coordinated planning. So I think there's opportunity there. As we saw on slide 10, which featured the 4 little maps, a lot of fueling and layover infrastructure already exists out there, and it's accessible to a greater or lesser extent. But does it really make sense for what the fleets want to use and where they want to travel? And I think that's where collaborators like Mary Grace from the I-95 Corridor Coalition can come in and say, we've done some work there, here's what we found, and here's where I think we need to go forward. We also, I think, can supply a communication platform to make connections among our various place-based efforts, be they on the state level or the MPO level. And then moving to slide 14, I think, oh, okay, I guess we're there. We've got the funding sources in our various little parts of the world. The energy, environmental, and transportation agencies all have certain pots of funding that can lend themselves to support clean freight corridor development, supplying alternative fueling infrastructure, layover, etc. How can we make those investments work together so that they make sense in a corridor framework? Diane from Federal Highway will talk a little bit in a few minutes about the FAST Act. Our stakeholders last fall really called vociferously for a follow-up event, and that's why we're already charging ahead to have a workshop or a forum in the fall of 2016, striking while the iron is hot. I also see this as building on the excellent New England Transportation Forum on Freight that the Volpe Transportation Systems Center held in November 2014, which called for greater interstate coordination in freight transportation planning. And all of the then secretaries of transportation from all of the states were definitely on board with that, and Federal Highway was pleased as punch to see that trend. So I think we can go forward even past this workshop that we're going to try to bring off this fall in developing a richer sense of each other's perspectives and needs and identifying value-added opportunities for collaboration. Back to you, Alicia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Abby. So now what we want to do is just pause for a moment or two to get perspective from stakeholders that we've been engaging with on this very topic and have not only demonstrated support, but are already taking action to look at how we can implement clean freight corridors. You will see on this slide here that we have different perspectives, not all perspectives, and that's why at a certain point during this call, I want to open it up for discussion because we want to make sure that we're getting your feedback. We want to hear from you on why is this initiative important and what do you want to get out of the work group. To kick things off, I wanted to ask Diane Turchetta, who's just been a wonderful partner and who's been working with our strategic planning team to develop the goals and objectives of this work group, who's been helping us look at how we can plan this workshop in the fall and providing a mechanism for us to provide this workshop in the fall, and also is playing a very important role with the FAST Act. So Diane, if you don't mind, I might just ask you to just share some words on the FAST Act and why you think this is an important initiative and what you're looking to get out of it.
Sure. Thank you, Alicia, and welcome everyone to the call. I'm really excited to be involved in this initiative. Just from a personal perspective, I've been working on these issues for a very long time. I don't want to reveal my age, but I spent a long time at EPA working on fuel issues, and the last 16 years at Federal Highway working on air quality and climate change transportation issues. And just to, there's both Abby and Alicia alluded to the FAST Act. There's a couple of provisions in there that are really nicely dovetail with what we're trying to do with this group. I'm not as familiar with the freight ones, but there is a new, both a formula freight program and a competitive freight program that basically, as one of its goals, promotes a more sustainable freight transportation system. I'm more involved with designation with Section 1413, which is the designation of alternative fuel or clean corridors. And we're currently within Federal Highway trying to figure out exactly how to roll that out and how to get the most stakeholder input available in terms of the process of how we're going to roll it out and different nuances and more specifics about the details of the program. So we're currently just kicking around a few ideas, but I will, of course, through this group and others, let everyone know how we're going to gain some stakeholder feedback on that provision in terms of implementation. And from my perspective, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have to say that there seems to be right now some synergy and momentum that for these issues, especially giving our greenhouse gas administration's greenhouse gas emission reductions goals for mid and late century, and what just happened in Paris, along with other air quality issues. And it just seems like right now is just a great time to have this workshop and bring folks together and really take a step forward towards addressing these issues. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I haven't seen such excitement around the issue, and even from bottom up and top down. Our management chain at Federal Highway Administration, we have some great people who are very interested in these issues right now, and I think we can get a lot done. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to Alicia.
Great. Thank you so much, Diane. Greatly appreciate your feedback and your partnership. You really have helped us move this forward. We're really excited about the potential of this workshop and how we can support Federal Highways in defining clean corridors and potentially in the Northeast how we can help support the designation of clean corridors. The next person I would like to introduce is Jerry Bogas, who is the Planning Director for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. Jerry has also been a great ally and has been someone who's played a role in the very beginning of our conversation of even pulling together the Clean Corridor Congress. Jerry has been a leader in this region, in this metropolitan region of New York, in looking at solutions at promoting clean transportation. And I would love to hear from you, Jerry, on what does this initiative mean to you, and what would you like to see come out of this work group?
Sure, thanks, Alicia. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, okay. And that means everybody else can, too. So good afternoon, everybody. The New York Metropolitan Transportation Council is a metropolitan planning organization. And these organizations exist throughout the country in metropolitan regions in order to fulfill the federal requirements for transportation planning so that federal dollars can flow for transportation improvement. So what Diane was talking about, the policies and the funding programs of the federal government are expressed across the country, mainly through metropolitan planning organizations. I was happy to take part in the Clean Corridor Congress last October, and one thing that struck me and others there was that the level of discussion and buy-in from the folks who have to move goods is such that we really need to start thinking about essentially institutionalizing the concept and moving it into the planning phase, expressing it within the MPO plans and the regional plans that then become a basis for federal funding. Also, with regard to the council that I work for, the New York City DOT, one of our members, is a very strong proponent of any number of clean technology, alternative fuel technology initiatives for many years. And so they were a prime mover also in terms of having this concept moved into the regional planning process. So because of those things, our interest is we are in the process right now of beginning the development of our next regional freight plan. Just made a lot of sense to be able to bring this corridor into the mix and bring this concept rather into the mix of clean corridors and have them identified and designated in the regional freight plan. So this was even before the FAST Act was passed, and there is a section that applies to the designation of corridors now. The other thing I just want to point out is in terms of geography, the planning area that we are responsible for is New York City, suburban Long Island, and 3 lower Hudson Valley counties. But clearly the metropolitan region is bigger than that, and if you look at the whole Northeast mega region, it's bigger still. So action within one particular metropolitan planning organization, while good, is just a first step, and the need for that larger regional coordination, that mega regional coordination, is also pretty evident. So we have hopefully begun to take steps in that direction also through a consortium we have of metropolitan planning organizations in the New York City metropolitan region. As it's kind of a first step to looking at this in a larger regional basis and making sure that the planning that's happening in one part of this larger region is consistent with the planning in another part with regard to this concept. So that's really our perspective. How do we bring this in? Certainly we have air quality challenges in our region, and we have many challenges with the movement of trucks and goods and how to best do that and mitigate impacts on local communities and so forth. So this initiative seems to fit very, very closely with what we're trying to accomplish on a number of different levels. So I hope that's enough of a summary, Alicia.
Jerry, that's a wonderful summary. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Great. And so the next person, and Mary Grace Parker, many of you may know her. She plays a very important role with the I-95 Corridor Coalition and is responsible for freight mobility and safety. And in the very beginning of us pulling this concept together, and even when we were planning the partners meeting, we wanted to make sure that we were inviting the state DOTs to participate in this planning process, in this coordination process. And so with the I-95 Corridor Coalition, representing members of DOTs and states of which the I-95 runs through, we felt it would be really important to engage this group to be a part of this planning team. Mary Grace, if you wouldn't mind, can you share just a couple minutes of your thoughts on what you think about this initiative and what you would like to see come out of this work group?
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So just for a quick overview, I think most everyone knows that, as you alluded, that we're a coalition of greater than the Northeast Diesel Collaborative region, obviously the states from Maine to Florida and Vermont. So, encompass a couple of diesel collaborative regions, but certainly been through the work with Abby and others very interactive with Northeast Diesel Collaborative for a number of years. I think in terms of my thoughts, first I'm going to start by saying what Jerry said, and and then add to that perspective, I think, from state DOTs, which is all of those issues about mobility, issues about planning, concerns about air quality, and now we're talking about knitting up, state to state across a corridor. And what I think the opportunity and maybe the synergy is going forward is, for the last several years, the state DOTs have been very focused on, through MAP 21, trying to become compliant with looking at state freight planning. Within state freight planning, obviously, we now have under the FAST Act not only a mandate for state freight plans in order to be eligible for certain types of funding, but you need to have that be multimodal. So, we certainly learned along the way that there's opportunities through modal diversion, through addressing bottlenecks, to remove congestion. And once you start to reduce congestion, you have the opportunity to address some air quality issues. So that longer-term process that the DOTs are going to be heading into, looking at their freight plans, they also have to look at them in the sense that from an origin and destination, few of those states are the beginning and the end of freight movements. They're a last mile in many cases, and particularly in some of the metropolitan areas, they may be the emanating point for distribution and warehousing, or even, with 42 ports along this corridor, a landside access point, as Kevin Fumigan will probably talk to later. So that need to look at that origin and destination from a corridor perspective is going to be critical for states for freight planning, because one of the key issues they're going to want to address is not ultimately ending up with a bottleneck that's maybe addressed in one area that doesn't give you a fluid corridor. So this whole freight corridors concept that's been talked about, referenced in the FAST Act, I think it's going to perk up for the state DOTs, and we're going to see focus, and we're having some discussions beginning within our intermodal program committee. But it relates directly to clean corridors, because the emissions in the vehicles that are moving through those corridors are carrying that freight. So if we can think about those corridors and begin to think about how we map them out, where some of those movements are, where's our biggest points of either congestion or our biggest points of demand, I think that's going to help to start to think about where some of the demand is going to be to make investments for clean air. And I'll use an analogy that even in the wider national discussion that's going on in truck parking, thinking about where you're going to look at your capacity demands for truck parking, it's pretty much where your capacity demands are going to be there for freight movement, for refueling, and a lot of those related activities that are going to come with moving over from different types of fuel and energy sources for vehicles. So we're standing ready, certainly talking to our states, and will be about where these things interact and how we should be looking at them as a coalition. Is it from the standpoint of helping with planning? Is it data resources to try to see if we can carve out what some of these corridors and demands are? And obviously this, to us, fits in naturally because it's another piece within that puzzle. So many of our state DOTs are participating in this corridor, in the Clean Corridors Initiative in various levels. We'll be talking to some of them as we move forward in some of our own transitions that are occurring very shortly within the coalition. So we look forward to talking with you all on how we can help and how we might help our state DOTs.
Thank you, Mary Grace. That was wonderful, and I think you're absolutely right. This is an opportunity for us to really prioritize areas and understanding the origin and destination and where we can eliminate bottlenecks and where we can plan for clean corridors along very congested areas and where there might be communities that are aligned with those freight corridors. I think that's great, and we are just so extremely appreciative of your partnership and your support and reaching out to your members. That's just excellent. The next person I would like to introduce is Barry Carr. Barry Carr is a really great fellow. He is a Clean City Coordinator for the Greater Lansing area of New York, and he's also the Business Development Manager for Landy Renzo. I'm sure a number of you know who Barry is. He's just a really great guy and is always looking at how to help be a part of the solution. And I thought it'd be good because clean cities, there are boots on the ground. They're the ones that are helping us to move these clean transportation programs forward. and helping us to set up the infrastructure, and they've already made a lot of progress in the Northeast. And so they're a critical partner to this planning process and this coordination process. So I thought it'd be really good for us to hear from Barry and hear what he thinks about this and some of the good work that he's up to. Barry, I'm going to unmute you so you can.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
That works?
Thank you very much. Yep. I'm Barry Carr. I wear two hats. Number one is I volunteer as a Clean Cities coordinator through the DOE Clean Cities program in upstate New York. Don't know where Greater Lansing is, but I'll treat that as a typo, Alicia. But for my paying job, I do business development and support for Landy Renzo on the East Coast. And Landy Renzo builds natural gas and propane operating systems for Ford, General Motors, Isuzu, Freightliner, and a host of others. And in my job, I travel up and down I-95 and throughout the East Coast and mid-Atlantic states, and I see the need not only for improvements to the corridor, but to integrate all the various alternative fuel stations that we have along the corridor. This started out with me trying to find places where natural gas was still significantly less expensive than gasoline and diesel. And while all of you on the call have benefited from low gasoline and diesel prices, it has really hurt the alternative fuel world and slowed down sales and development. So I've identified a number of locations that are adjacent to I-95, and primarily they are natural gas stations that are operated or owned by utilities. So the utilities either get subsidized by the ratepayers, or the utilities enjoy the fact that they already own the property, so they don't have a real estate cost that many of the private developers have. So in identifying these spots, which would include the utilities, South Jersey Gas, New Jersey Natural Gas, National Grid out on Long Island, Con Ed in New York, Philadelphia Gas Works, Gain, which is a U.S. oil-owned company, and Spire, and then the private, actually publicly traded company Clean Energy that operates a lot of stations. We found some that were as low as 92 cents per gallon for natural gas, and some that are as high as $2.69. So we're focusing on the lower price stations, and at the same time, I felt, being an all fuels person, that every public access CNG station runs at 480 volts. So it would be very easy to add DC fast charge or level 3 charging for electric vehicles at these public sites. And it would additionally be very easy to add propane dispensers, biodiesel dispensers, ethanol dispensers, anything we could do to continue to make affordable alternative fuels available to the masses. So I'd like to start on using the I-95 corridor, and then I'd like to expand this to the I-90 corridor, which goes right through Syracuse, New York, where I'm sitting today, as a New York State Thruway, and then Mass Pike, and going west out through Cleveland, and then the I-81 corridor, which is a major transportation line going from Canada all the way down to, I believe, Knoxville, Tennessee. I just think it's a very natural cooperative venture here. I mentioned this to you, Diane. I listened to you speak last week, and I must say that you're a lot younger than I am. So I got a kick out of you saying that you were one of the older people here. And I can work very well with the New Jersey Coalition, the New York coalitions, and all the other people that you, Alicia, and you, Abby, are working with, and hopefully get some guidance from Mike Scarpino at the Volpe Center. So any way I can help out the group, I am happy to participate.
Great, thank you, Barry. And I think that's where it is key to bring in our Clean City coordinators, is because they're working on a number of efforts that, one, a number of the folks that are on the phone may know what's happening in their area, and some of these Clean City coordinators are really paving out some programs that are going to make a big impact on how we build out our clean freight corridors. So, Barry, we're really excited to have your participation in order to correctly title your Clean City Coalition. All right, wonderful. Well, the next individual I'd like to introduce to you is another good friend to NEDC, Jeff Flemmingham, who is the director of the North Atlantic Gateway Office with the U.S. DOT Maritime Administration. In the very beginning of pulling together our Clean Corridor Congress, again, going back to making this a focus on all modes of transportation, we wanted to make sure that we were including the goals and objectives of the maritime and as it relates to marine highways, and as we look at how to reduce congestion and move some of our freight to alternative modes, how that plays an important role in supporting efficiency and the advancement of clean vehicle technology. So I've asked Jeff to share his perspective on the Northeast Clean Freight Corridors work group and what he plans to get out of this work group and what he would like to see in terms of our accomplishments. Jeff?
Well, thank you very much, Alicia, and good afternoon to everybody. Alicia, could you throw up that slide I sent you?
Got it up.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. If you were a casual observer of what was going on in seaports today, you might think that things are in terrible condition. Ports are the new power plants in terms of pollution, harboring pollution, the dirty truth about U.S. ports. LA needs fewer platitudes and more action on port air pollution. Those are some of the headlines that I pulled down today. And for the last 2 years, we've seen a real adversarial take on how seaports are addressing pollution issues. And my message to the group today is not a negative one, but actually a positive one, that things are not as bad as I was portrayed in the media today, with things such as the emission control areas. The United States is taking the lead on providing liquefied natural gas here in the United States to shipping. Some of the environmental and sustainability efforts that are going on in the port authorities and the terminals around the Northeast is the good news. There are some tremendous changes underway, and it's not quite as bad as it's portrayed. I work with 42 MPOs in my region, from Philadelphia all the way to northern Maine, and I can tell you the port authorities, the state DOTs, the terminal operators, the shipping companies are all working very hard in making the maritime industry much cleaner, and there is a positive message to be done, to be set out there, and I'm working throughout the region to promote the notion that seaports are doing everything they can to make their areas cleaner and what they do more sustainable. So those are my comments for today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Alicia.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and thanks, and we're really looking forward to your ongoing perspective and leadership in this group, and really appreciate all the great projects that you're currently working on, and thanks for sharing your perspective. The next individual and our last individual of our perspectives, and this isn't going to end our discussion, folks, because as we get to the end of the program, I want to open it up to the rest of the work group to get your perspective and to get your feedback. And again, this is our kickoff meeting. We want to introduce to you what we plan to do and why we believe this is important and why the time is now to act on it. We want to make sure that we're getting your voices heard. But with the work group meetings going forward, we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to get to work. So we're really excited about this. The next person I would like to introduce is Ian Campbell. He is the Senior Environmental Project Manager with Massport. So it would be really important to get a port perspective on why it's important that we promote clean freight corridors in the Northeast. So Ian, I'm going to unmute you for just 1 second. I think I have you under attendees, so bear with me, everyone. There you are, Ian. Okay, Ian, I've unmuted you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Can you hear me? Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so most of you have heard from me before on these calls and maybe some other places. You know, I work for Massport, which is Massachusetts Port Authority. We're a consolidated port authority, so we not only operate the seaport here in Boston, but we operate 3 different airports. So there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, with regard to freight, I mean, you know, Conley Terminal clearly is a big concern to us, and we put a lot of energy into that recently, and cleaning that up, and you know, trying to minimize our impact to the surrounding communities and beyond, if possible. You know, Logan Airport has got a fair amount of freight as well. We've got warehouses and freight operations and things like that. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunity, you know, and there are also a lot of challenges. In the recent past, we've pursued DERA grants, so we've done things like, you know, a truck replacement program where we replaced 20 trucks with a DERA grant, giving them up to $25,000 maximum match toward the purchase of a new truck, or a new or used truck anyway, that was at least 2007 compliant. Massport then kind of upped the ante and funded a second phase of that program where an additional 40 trucks were replaced, and we're just at the end of that program now, so 60 trucks in total have been replaced. Those are privately owned trucks, you know, by trucking companies that service Conley Terminal. So we're very proud of that. We're in the process of putting in a dedicated freight corridor to get truck traffic off of Conley Terminal and out to the main roads, so it bypasses the local neighborhoods. So in addition to safety and noise and traffic congestion issues, you don't have idling trucks sitting in front of playgrounds and condominiums and things like that to kind of get them out of the area faster and onto the interstate system. You know, all those things have been great. We just recently won a DERA grant also to repower some of our RTGs at Conley Terminal. So they're going to new Tier 4 rated diesel engines in them, cleaning up substantially from what they were before. So, you know, we're making some efforts. You know, CNG is an area that we've pursued quite a bit at Logan. There's a CNG station here at Logan Airport, so our buses, the majority of them use CNG. We've got a fleet of 21 now CNG powered buses, up from 18 last year, that transport people around the airport, which has helped dramatically in terms of air quality in the area. We have diesel electric hybrid buses that have replaced the shuttle buses to the various car rental agencies here at the airport, which has also been wonderful. But, you know, again, there's room for improvement. You know, part of our wish list is that, you know, some of the funding opportunities that come up would help to offset some of the infrastructure costs. You know, particularly Conley Terminal. I mean, we've got natural gas lines that are not really sufficient for, you know, a CNG or LNG station, which is what I've kind of been advocating for a while. You know, we mentioned earlier the whole chicken and egg scenario, and that's exactly where we are. We own yard equipment at Conley Terminal, but have been unable to transition over to alternative fuels because there are no alternative fuels available. And financially, you know, putting in an alternative fuels station doesn't make any sense if you don't own the vehicles. So, you know, there we are. So some of the opportunities that have come up in the recent past have had, you know, minimum throughput numbers for CNG sales, which scared everybody away, frankly, because nobody was sure we could make those numbers because we'd be depending on, you know, fleets coming in and other people using it, all of which were kind of wild cards at that point. Electrical distribution capacity is another issue. We're looking into actively right now ship-to-shore power at our not only Conley Terminal but also Black Falcon Cruise Terminal, which would, you know, when the ships, the cruise ships are hoteling, they're running their generators. When the cargo ships are there being loaded and unloaded, they're running their generators. So if we had ship-to-shore power, that would be a dramatic reduction in you know, pollution in the immediate area of those two facilities. So the surrounding neighborhoods, which are surprisingly close by, would realize immediate benefits, as well as the region in general. You know, we are basically limited at this point, and particularly at Conley, by the infrastructure. So, with diesel fuel prices being at all-time lows, or maybe not all-time lows, but the lowest they've been in an awful long time, it's hard to drum up interest. And again, that's already kind of been addressed here as well, but we're feeling the same pain there. I mean, inevitably they'll go back up. I think right now is a fantastic opportunity to do something like that. So when they do go back up, you're poised to take advantage of that. But getting interest and, more importantly, funding is a little more challenging right now. That's more or less all I had to talk about. I mean, is anybody's got any questions or would like me to touch on anything else, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Ian. No, that's great, and it's great to hear what you're working on and some of the challenges that you're up against, but then how funding opportunities through grant programs like DARA are helping you to implement some of these emission reduction programs and clean transportation programs. And that's exactly, through this group where we're looking to help encourage, promote, and provide information, but also learn from each other on how we can improve the efforts that we're doing and how we can better align those projects so that we are, in fact, creating and promoting clean freight corridors. So no, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your feedback, Ian, and we're looking forward to your participation in this work group. So just real quick, I do want to have some time for a greater discussion amongst the entire group. I just wanted to basically talk about, okay, what's our path forward? How are we going to move forward as a group? So goal number one, we want to have regular work group calls. And so we're looking at our next work group call to be the week of the March 8th. What I will do is kind of coordinate with a team on a time that works best and then set that as a regular ongoing call. These calls are going to be rolling up the sleeves and getting to work and having clear objectives of what we want to get out of the conversation. We want to make sure that our work group meetings are bringing you value. At the same time, we're hearing from each other on what are the barriers, what are the opportunities, how do we define a clean corridor, and really taking advantage of opportunities on how we can collaborate and move forward. So we really want to make sure that you're getting value from these work group discussions. But there's a lot we need to learn from you, and that's why we're engaging all these different stakeholders together to sit around the table to talk about this topic. Goal number two, we're going to have a workshop in the fall, and this is much thanks to Diane and her team, the Federal Highways Pooled Fund, Oregon DOT, Cadmus Group, and Atlas Policy are going to be hosting and pulling together a workshop focused on clean freight corridors, and our work group will be able to contribute to some of the ideas and objectives that will be carried out at that workshop. So we're really excited about that, and we're hoping that as we engage in this work group dialogue, that we'll be able to really help create a program where it's going to drive some real good and meaningful action. Goal number three is that we want to continue to raise awareness on what's going on in the Northeast states. We want to gain political and state support for clean freight corridors. We want to be able to work with you to plan regional projects of significance and identify critical areas where we need to advance clean transportation. And some of going back to what Mary Grace was saying in terms of identifying where we need to prioritize these clean transportation projects to reduce bottlenecks and better understanding where that origin and destination is so we can pinpoint exactly where we need to focus our efforts. And then support a region with near and long-term goals, and that's what we're going to be doing through this work group effort. And then we also want to keep our eye on the prize. What funding is out there to help us implement these programs, and how can we take advantage of them more effectively? So real quick, and we've discussed this already, we've made a lot of progress. We had our Clean Corridor Congress. Thanks to Jerry, we've been meeting with NIMTEC and the Freight Planning Group and looking at how we can start incorporating clean corridor goals into the regional freight plan. And then we presented in front of the Transportation Research Board, thanks to Diane and to Mike Scarpino from the Volpe Center, to really talk about at a national level, why are clean freight corridors important? So we're really excited, and I think that this is a great opportunity, and just to see as many of you that have come together, and I looked at the list of registration participants for today's call, and it's just amazing all the different folks that we have on the phone, whether it's MPOs, DOTs, DEPs, ports, truck fleets, construction companies, environmental groups. This is who we need to be in this work group, and we're really excited to work with you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop, and I would really love to hear from you What do you think about this work group? What would you like to get out of this work group? We'll spend the rest of our time discussing this, and then if we want to go over a little bit, that's fine, but I want to be sensitive to everyone's schedule today. So what I'm going to do is encourage, first, let me see if anyone on our panel here has any additional comments, and then I want to make sure that I'm opening up to our attendees. I'm going to go ahead and unmute folks so that you can speak up. And then if you're not a panelist and you are interested in saying something or participating, if you want to go ahead and just raise your hand, then I can unmute you.
Hi, this is Barry Carr. Alicia, how do we get a copy of today's presentation in a little PowerPoint? Can you send that out?
Absolutely. Barry, I'm actually recording this meeting right now so that folks who weren't able to sign in or participate today will be able to witness the video presentation. So we'll make the slides available and we'll make this webinar available.
Hey, Alicia, this is Gary, Region 1. We'll have this up on the Northeast Diesel Collaborative website as well, on northeastdiesel.org, within a couple of days.
Great. Thanks, Gary. Great. Any other comments? I see a number of folks on, yes, Steve Russell. Hold on, buddy. Let me unmute you here. Okay, I've unmuted you, Stephen.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Steve Russell from Massachusetts. And as you know, the position of Massachusetts, we're in the middle of the freight corridor. It's going to be imperative that we, as a state, do things to support the corridor. And Ian Campbell and I need to talk because I have some funding for infrastructure that's still available through our CMAQ funds and would love to work with Massport. But as well, we need to communicate as states to make sure that if we're doing something, here, that it complements whatever's going on in New York or down in New Jersey or in Connecticut or even in Vermont, Maine, or Rhode Island. I think it's really important. So, and this discussion of fuel, it's really a mute issue. What we're really talking about here is clean air. I think the most important thing we can focus on is the fact that diesel is not clean, and we need to do things to clean that up. And so that's part of our mission as Clean Cities Coordinators is to reduce petroleum reduction, but that reduction cleans the air, and that's the most imperative message we have to get out there. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Great message, and thanks so much for attending today, and great to have the Massachusetts Clean Cities on board. The next person I'm going to unmute here is my friend Jerry Coyle. Jerry from Evans Trucking. I've unmuted you, my friend. Please speak up.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Alicia. How are you?
Good. Good to have you.
One of the things that we've talked about in when Jeff was talking about port pollution, and one of the key issues in port pollution is the growing port congestion, and it comes from two reasons: that the marine terminals may not be able to handle the volume, and the connectors between the marine terminals and the highways are insufficient to handle the volume, and then you get backups. So one of the things that we've looked at, and I just sat in a meeting the other day in Philadelphia, where they're going to do their first time ever air emissions inventory. It's going to be port focused, and they just brought in Starcrest to do it. It's being done through the DBRPC. So getting your arms around the data is an important issue, and then also bringing in the collaboration of the trucking companies who can tell you what's going in and out of the ports and then where it's going from there. I think it's important to look at how to get your arms around the data. And the other thing I would suggest, and I know Abby has done some of this, is to reach out to the state trucking organizations and the American Trucking Association to include them in the discussion.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Go ahead. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, whoever was speaking.
So, this was Jeff. I think that's an excellent idea. DVRPC has been a big supporter of marine highway efforts. I've been involved with them for a number of years. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey has an inventory as well. So yeah, as you said, wrapping your hands around the data, how many pieces of equipment, what they do, how they do it, what sort of emissions are included per piece of equipment is important. And especially what types of equipment, whether it's a diesel-driven or whether it's a natural gas or compressed natural gas system, is important. And as we see ports going to shore power systems, we'll want to include that as well.
Yeah, I agree.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Jerry. Good to hear from you. I'm glad you're on. In fact, I believe we do have, and we certainly invited the New York Trucking Association and the Massachusetts Truck Association to this group, and I think one of them registered today. So yes, absolutely. I think that is, we need to engage our associations that represent members that we're looking to engage in this process, and there certainly are going to be important advocates as we move this forward. May I just pause for a minute to see if there's anybody else who would like to speak up? Oh, I see Jillian. I'm going to unmute you, Jillian.
Hi, Alicia. This is Jillian Swain, and I'm the Associate Director of the Mass Motor Transportation Association. And that there was a gentleman, I believe his name was Jerry, who had suggested that the trucking associations be involved, and I just wanted to make everyone aware that we are absolutely willing to participate, and we're excited about this initiative. In fact, our board of directors actually just appointed a natural gas CNG director to our board, and he works for ABSG. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that company. So we actually have some natural gas and alternative fuel members of our board. So this is something that we're definitely looking into. And if you guys are interested, I'm happy to, because the trucking associations belong to ATA, we have a Trucking Association Executive Council, and our region, Region 1 is pretty close. So if you're looking to reach out to any of the other state executives in the area, we'd be more than happy to get them on board.
Great, Jillian, wonderful. Great to have you, and thank you for speaking up.
Thank you.
Great feedback. Great. Well, folks, I do see that it's 3 o'clock and we're at the end of the hour. I'm happy to spend another 5 minutes hearing from you. I do want to be considerate of your schedules, and we're very lucky to have you on the call today. Any other thoughts before we end today?
Alicia, it's Martha from the Bridgeport Port Authority. One thing I would like to get out of this myself is to form new partnerships. For example, I have never worked with Clean Cities on anything, and I don't know if Clean Cities can help me with my port or not, but you know, this is a good opportunity to work with them and see how we can work together. So it would be a new partnership, and I think when you have a lot of partnerships like that, there's going to be a lot of successes. So that's my 2 cents.
Great, thank you, Martha, and you've been just a wonderful partner on our team. Thanks for your good feedback, and that's a great idea, and that's what we're going to make happen. All right, real quick, I'm going to go to Chip Millard. Hi, Chip. I've unmuted you.
Hi. I heard that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, I think this has been a good conversation, and I appreciate the invite, and Diane for sort of definitely nudging me to make sure I attended, and there's some good discussion here today. I think there's a lot of different things that could be touched on. A couple things that I think that are worth mentioning is thinking about in terms of sort of the bottlenecks or sort of how you can address lower emissions fuels and whatnot, is really looking at, and this I think was touched on a little bit earlier, different approaches to how different freight vehicles operate. So, there's differences in terms of, which obviously there's differences between, ships versus railroads versus trucks, and then there's differences within each of those modes. And in particular, thinking about the truck mode, there's some shipments that are long-distance shipments, and then there's some shipments that are shorter-distance shipments. There's shipments that are on the interstates. There are shipments that are in urban areas, and the way that the operational needs, the approaches to addressing them may be different depending on how they operate. It's the opportunity, I think, for alternative fuels, let's say like electric vehicles, if you're talking about urban shipments, much greater opportunities there because of the short haul and low speeds. And maybe with longer haul shipments, it's something with obviously the idea of electrical hookup or something like that. So different approaches depending on how the different vehicles actually operate, and getting a sense of the carriers and their customers and what the needs are. And the other thing I was going to say is that Mary Grace mentioned about bottlenecks, and that was mentioned a couple different times. And just thinking about one of the big things I always emphasize people that know me is land uses, and understanding what kind of land uses generate freight movements, where are they located, where are they clustered. If it's something where there's, if you're talking about an urban area, if it's stop and go, and so having an understanding about those kind of things in terms of the amount of freight that's actually generated, I think are definitely a couple different. Those things are a couple different things among many that could be examined as part of this effort. There's a number of different approaches, and I would say it's not one approach fits all. A variety of approaches, I think, is the way to address this. So apologize if I rumbled there a little bit.
No, Chip, that's great, because in fact, when we had our Clean Corridor Congress, and we started, taking feedback from folks on, what are the big barriers that we're facing, that was the realization that we have to take an all-of-the-above approach to technology, and where we assign that technology, that it has to fit in the right application. So I think that was an excellent point, and thank you for bringing it up. And thanks, Chip, for being on our call today, and thanks for the team, Federal Highway Support, with this initiative. We're certainly looking forward to working with you and seeing how we can help Federal Highways designate and promote these clean corridors.
All right. Well, glad I could participate.
Thank you. Well, great. Before we go, any final comments? Let me see. Let me take a look here. Any other hands? All righty. How about my fellow panelists, any final thoughts before we sign off? And then just as a reminder, we will be reaching out to all of you with the next date for our meeting. We'll want to coordinate with you on a date and time that works best for your schedule so that we can set up regular calls. And we'll also produce a really good agenda so you have an idea of what we're going to be focusing on our next call. Any final thoughts from the team?
Well, this is Barry, and Alicia, please feel free and share my contact information with everyone. And by all means, reach out to me for assistance. I'd like to be part of this team.
You got it, Barry. I count on you.
Alicia, this is Abby. I just wanted to say I think subsequent calls are going to be a lot more interactive. We had to lay out some groundwork here just to bring people up to speed on what we've thought of and where we've come from. But I really anticipate a lot more kind of give and take on subsequent calls.
Great. Thank you, Abby. And I want to also just mention, I don't know, Susan, if you can speak up, my partner in clean air crime. Susan, any feedback from you, my dear?
Just hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm trying to launch another program tomorrow, so I was a little hung up on that, and I got onto the webinar a little late, and I apologize for that. What I did here I thought was really excellent, and it sounds like you have the right partners around the table for sure, and I hope that the rest of the attendees got a lot out of it and continue to come along with us on this journey, and try to help really affect change in the freight sector. It desperately needs it. Not a lot of work has been done. The design of the truck alone hasn't been changed in the last 60 or 70 years or something. So it's sort of exciting times, and I think it'll be really interesting to interact with you all on this.
Great, thank you, Susan. And then, Mike, if I can just toss it to you, and maybe we'll close off after your thoughts, coming from the Volpe Center and someone who's also worked for the Clean Cities program at the Department of Energy for a very long time, who's been a key leader in this region. What are your thoughts before we conclude?
Well, I would say after an hour plus, there's really nothing much I can add to what everyone has said. I do feel like, I don't know, I can't remember who said it, might have been Diane at the beginning. I think a lot of things are converging here, and this may be a good time finally to be able to implement programs and projects that look beyond the traditional state or local boundaries and really put them in a bigger perspective for a regional plan. So I do think pulling together the different federal, state, local agencies together with, nonprofits like Clean Cities and private companies, we're all going to have to work together to make this happen. And I would say this group has got all the ingredients to move forward. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, those were excellent thoughts, Mike, and great way to end our program for today, our first work group meeting. Thanks for many of you who are still holding on, and it was just great to hear the different perspectives and to really talk about some of the important actions that we want to do moving this work group forward. As a follow-up, we will be following up with all the folks that participated in today's work group meeting with next steps, and we'll make sure that you have a copy of this presentation as well as the link to the recorded webinar. Again, thank you so much. Thank you to the strategic planning team, to Diane and the Federal Highways, and Mike, and just all the partners that have helped make this work group vision come true. And now with all the different partners that have signed on today, we can't wait to work with you. So until then, we'll be speaking with you very soon, and have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
See ya.